Hi Fars, hi Ziwe, hi Deepak, hello Lee, hi Viswanath, hi Aruhi, hi Yifeng, hello, welcome. It's about time, and I think everybody is in the good afternoon or good evening zone. So, welcome everybody. It's great to have such a diverse group of leaders, all the HR professionals. I can see some colleagues here as well. The topic is future of HR from now to 2030. And when we saw this topic, I was wondering the 2030 is still far away, isn't it? It almost feels as though it's there are going to be spaceships flying across, or I don't know what 2030 would look like. But we are in this interesting moment of time where AI is accelerating, roles are getting redesigned, leadership expectations are shifting, and many organizations are trying to solve all these problems which really look like spaceships, isn't it? So today's session is not about chasing these trends. It's about how can we as people who are driving human resource capital, who are shaping human resources, how can we support this in this moment? How can we support all the organizations? So, intentionally shape people, leadership, and organizations. That is the way forward. And we have someone who has seen all of this and much more, or is seeing a lot that is happening within organizations through a different lens, through the national lens, through an ecosystem, through the Southeast Asian, how Asian companies are shaping up. Alvin Goh, who is the CEO of Singapore Human Resource Institute. We are indeed very privileged to have you with us. We are very eager to know from you what can human resources and how can human edge look like in 2030 or from now onwards. Alvin works closely with leaders, policymakers, organizations, navigating job redesign. So, leadership evolution and human capability in the age of AI is not very new for Alvin. So, this conversation will be both forward looking as well as grounded as to what is actually happening in the market, in the industry. So, Alvin, over to you. We are very eager to know from where you sit nationally and across industries. Are organizations really redesigning the future of work, or are they just trying to fit in? Over to you.
Thanks, Mahuri. Thanks for the opportunity to share my views, and but also I'd like to also acknowledge the various leaders in the virtual room, as well as our SHRI members, longtime council members as well. Mr. Chai is also there. Thank you for participating in this. Thank you. Yes, yeah. And also today I'm actually going to share with you some viewpoints that I've actually seen. But there's one thing for sure that I can assure you, to some level of confidence of what's going to happen in year 2030. And that is, by year 2030, I hope to grow my hair long and to play golf almost every other day. And I hope to have, at that point of time, retire already. All right. So I'm actually working towards that. All right. So that's something that, it's not too far in the distance for me. But for all the aspiring CHROs and business leaders in this room itself, it boils down to what we actually have to do today to get to 2030. And I'll share with you some of the evidence and what I'm seeing across Singapore and also in the region that is tickling the minds of business leaders and as well as CHROs themselves about the future, not only from a tech perspective, but from many other data points as well. All right. So feel free to ask me any questions that you might have on the chat group. And yeah, let's make this virtual conference a very much more interactive one. All right. So let me share my slides with you. Okay, I hope you can see my main slide. Is it possible for you
Yeah.
to see my main slide?
Interesting. It is visible. Yes.
Okay, so the title of my topic today is really about future of HR, as Madhuri has actually talked about from now to 2030. Incidentally, 26 February 2026, if I were to just look at, what's really happening here, it's a number reflection, 2002 2026. All right, so coincidentally, this is the only coincidence that has happened. But based on, business landscape, nothing is coincidental. Everything is and must be strategically designed to cater to the changing evolution of today's or rather tomorrow's workplace. We've talked a lot in about the future of work, the future of the workforce, and the future of work as well. But there's one thing that we have not really talked about is with the evolution of AI and technology itself. What about the future of wisdom? Right? Something for us to ponder and think about. All right. So hold that thought about the future of wisdom and ask any of the questions that you might have. But let's get through to some of the key areas that I would also like to engage you. Right? In today's world, right? Just very quickly, I'm just going to give you maybe about 30 seconds on the group chat, right? And ask this question. In today's world, what is HR about? All right, so 30 seconds off you go. Uh, you know, on the group chat, let me know your thoughts and point views. What in today's world, what is HR about? The chat. Okay, good. So Yifang, hey, hi Yifang, how good to see you here. All right, Yifang says paper pushing and people partnering. Phoenicia is saying maximizing human capital and potential. Keeping the human in loop in organizations is about engagement and experience. Great. I think all of you are right. Madhuri, clearly great answer. Bridging generation divide. All right. Great, wonderful. I think these are all really, really very strong points about in today's world, what is HR about? But the key question is also about what do you think? The next question that I would like to ask you, what do you think HR will be like by 1st January 2030? Given the fact that today you said employee engagement, minimizing the generational divide, what do you think HR will be like by 1st January 2030? And please again go back to the chat group and put in your point of views over there. Any views? Again, wonderful answer. AI integrated and skill-based organization. That's a lovely answer. Thank you for that. Any other views? Who amongst you today have got a crystal ball right in front of you?
It's not a crystal ball, but I can turn this into one. But yeah.
Wow. HR using AI and not replacing AI. Okay, great. More AI drive, data powered, employee centric and strategic. Yes. Okay. Definitely the strategic area. Okay, so on that note, thank you for all the responses. I think these are really lovely responses for that. Now, the way I look at 1st Jan 2030, right, is that to a large extent, the function of HR must be a strategic partner to the business itself. as what we have been exposed to by various business leaders, the gurus of this world, including Professor Dave Ulrich, which I have the opportunity to learn greatly from, and his quote that has stuck with me for a long time, right? The role of HR today or yesterday is to be able to look at talent development, is to be able to look at succession planning, is to be the compliant officer to some extent, making sure that our work processes are progressive and also in compliance with the local legislation. But all this will have to change. And the reason for all this change is that HR for tomorrow is not only to be able to do all this effectively, but to do it in such a way that the business actually succeeds in the marketplace. If the business doesn't succeed in the marketplace, there's simply no workplace for us to manage, isn't it? And that's very clear, right? And that means for HR to be relevant for tomorrow is that we need to become strategic partners itself, whereby we align HR strategies with our business strategies. We need to be change agents to manage this transformation of how technology and how AI is taking over a lot of the future jobs and job roles, right? And also look at how we can be change agent to promote a much more inclusive, right, and human-centric, right, leadership culture in the future as well. And I'm saying all this, right, not because of going to ChatGPT or Perplexity, and then in preparation for this talk, I asked ChatGPT to come up with ideas for me itself. But more importantly, are the data points of what I'm seeing today that will be something, areas that we can take on, make decisions today to drive the organization into 2030. As I said, in the business world, nothing is coincidental. Nothing is fated. Everything must be deliberately planned out, right? Whether is it for the long game or the short game. And I'm going to use this model from Dave Ulrich itself, and I'm going to articulate what I'm seeing in the region as well, all right? So this model is called the STEP model, STEPED, right? And it looks from an outside-in perspective. And the reason why I say it's important for HR leaders to look at the outside-in perspective is because for far too long, right, HR has always been regarded as a cost center, as an administrative center. And that needs to change. This narrative needs to change. And to become and elevate yourself from a transactional HR professional to a strategic HR professional, we need to be aligned to the business. And the business guys are always in the marketplace. So on that matter, I'm going to just talk through, all right, what I'm seeing here today that will influence how HR function or professionals must pivot towards. One, of course, is social. The future workforce, the 16 years olds of today, and as well as the Gen Alphas and the Gen Betas that will come up into the future, I foresee to a large extent that social values are going to be extremely different for me and you. Their value systems, right, are going to be wired differently. Take, for example, right, my daughter, who is 22 years old now, when she was about the age of 14 years old, all right, I sat the children down and I asked them at that point of time when she was only age 14 years old, I asked her, Shauna, what is it that you want to do in the future? What kind of jobs that you want to do in the future? And I still remember at age 14, she was telling me that, Dad, I want to be a HR professional like you. All right. To be very frank and honest, my heart sank a little bit because you already have one HR person in the family. Why do you want to be in the HR as well? But she said this to me, Dad, I want to be a HR professional, but I'm not going to work crazy hours like you do. Right? So what does it mean? It means to her that work-life balance, personal values, right, anchored on work-life balance, right, is very critical for her. All right. At the same time, I also have a son, and he was at that point of time 13 years old. And I asked my son, Adro, what about you? If your sister wants to be a HR professional, what is it that you want to do? And he clearly, right, very quickly said that I want to be a lawyer, right? So I was thinking to myself, wow, lawyers, that's wonderful, right? Every signature that they sign off is like $200 to $300 itself. But he said that I want to be a family lawyer, right? Dealing in family law. And immediately to a large extent, my heart sank as well. And because we know here in Asia as well, lawyers that deal in family law, there's no money to be made, but a lot of heartaches, isn't it? But he said this, he felt there is a social calling for him, right? Being exposed at a very young age to the so-called quote unquote mistreatments of children, right? And how families are done in terms of breakups and everything. He wanted to do it because he wanted to take care, right, and protect children from the troubles of of husbands and wife or family as well. So again, his value system is going to be very different, right? And these are some of the data points that if I look around the region and when I speak to young executives and undergrads, this is what is actually coming out, right? For those of us in the room who are HR leaders, it's very common for us when we conduct an interview. Sometimes the first question that the candidate asks, right? Describe to me your workplace culture. Do you offer, right, work-life balance? What is your leadership culture and so forth in your organization look like? And if I recall back, even during my time when I was actually interviewing for jobs, right, I would be asking questions around business strategies and outlooks. But for them, when they are coming out for interviews, they are asking questions around values of the organization. So on that note, right, from a social values perspective, the future workforce will change. Of course, many of you on the group chat has talked about AI and technology. But the funny thing is this, we are fully aware that we must transform and adopt AI. But AI cannot just be a functional area. AI adoption must be done at enterprise level, right? We talk about job redesigns. When we redesign jobs and we look at technology and how AI could actually be incorporated into the current work that we do, we also must think, right, from a systemic perspective, how when I redesign one function of my job, how does it affect the value chain or the work processes or procedures that will affect other departments as well? Isn't it? And that's something that I see organizations are heading down if they're not careful in terms of their thinking process to be holistic and from an enterprise perspective, and just to focus on the digits, the single digits, that's a danger point that we need to be fully aware of as well, right? Whatever tech that we want to incorporate itself, it must be done on an enterprise level and not just on a functional area as well. And tech is a means to an end. It is not the platform that we go to. We have to understand at the end of the day, technology is a platform that enables effectiveness and efficiency in terms of our work, right? And but yet requires a high level of human ingenuity to actually take it and use it, harness it to the best of its ability, right? So that's about technology and AI. On the economic front, right? One of the key issues that we have seen over the last 1 to 2 years are all the current tariffs that has been put together by President Donald Trump. And that has also created a lot of economic uncertainty, right, in the organizations and workplace. On that note, we also know for a fact that the cost of production, right, the cost of manufacturing, the cost of sale has gone up tremendously. Margins are being stretched. Margins have been, to a large extent, compressed. And that's something that we need to be aware of in terms of how we design our reward system to cater for future productivity, right? And one of the key areas that I'm seeing is that a lot of HR professionals today cannot differentiate the strategy between compensation and benefits, right? It's actually lumped together as one today. But in the future, the way I look at it is that compensation is one hygiene factor. Benefits is also a strategy by itself. Take, for example, right, work-life balance. Take, for example, mental well-being, right? You must be able to design, right, your reward strategy that comprises of compensation as one, benefits as the second, right? Or rather, the other second pillar, right, in the rewards ecosystem, right? And not forgetting, right, the fact of the mental well-being, because to be very frank and honest, what I'm seeing, although people might say that Singapore has got a very, very robust system, but burnout is really very real. And I believe many of the audience today from the region as well, right? Many of us have faced burnout, right? And this is what I call the intangible effect on the economics of the business as well. So that's something for us to be mindful of. Now, P, of course, stands for political issues, right? Given the fact that here in Singapore, a large extent, right, that the workplace legislation have actually changed and evolved to be more progressive. And this has how affected a lot of times how HR leaders and even business leaders have got to conduct themselves. In Australia, about 2.5 years ago, they implemented the right to disconnect legislation at federal levels itself. So if you're not careful and you're managing the operations itself and you happen to call your fellow colleagues in Australia itself, there will be legislative issues and penalties if you were to do that. All right. In Korea itself, right, they also are toiling with the idea for legislating the right to disconnect as well, right? So all these political changes itself in terms of legislation will affect how HR leaders itself would actually have to function. Now, on a grander scale as well, of course, I cannot not talk about US Donald Trump, President Trump, especially after his State of the Union address just yesterday itself, whereby I was somewhat glued to it in terms of what he was saying and everything. We need to be cognizant of the geopolitical situations, not only on the trade wars, but right now also on the tariff war and the positioning that the US is taking on trade itself. So this 15% tariffs across that's being slapped across the board for 150 days, which is renewable according to the US president itself. How would our business leaders and how would all this itself affect businesses? And as a result, from a HR standpoint, as I said earlier on about the need for HR strategies to be aligned to the business strategies, these are the things that we need to be cognizant of as well. In terms of environment, by year 2030, for all of us who are worth our salt, we know that by year 2030, ESG reporting is going to be a must. So in terms of sustainability, what are we doing on that front in terms of our workforce as well, right? Finally, when it comes to demographics, D as well, it's about thinking about the size of our future workforce, right? The cognitive intelligence of the future workforce, of the future demographics. All these are the factors that will affect how we design workplace interventions, workplace learning for the future workforce. Take, for example, I want to have a show of hands. How many of you can confidently say, if I was to put you back in university today, based on the new curriculum, how many of you will confidently say that I will be able to ace my university exams again? Just for a quick show of hands. One, Madhuri? All right, great. Okay. But the key thing is this. The demographics, the future workforce of tomorrow, to a large extent, is much more intelligent than most of us today. There are new concepts of learning, new paradigms, new ways, new formulas that has evolved. So what I'm saying is that the skill sets, right, of the demographics of the future of workforce of tomorrow, right, is very different from what of the skill sets that I've learned during my time in university. right? So skills as a shelf life, skills as a talent as a shelf life has got its expiry limits itself. So we have to recognize that from that perspective, right, we always need to constantly upgrade and upskill ourselves based on the skills as well. And the demographics of what we are seeing tomorrow itself, this set of skills, talent that is coming out in the workforce, they possess a different skill set as compared to my time as well, and perhaps your time as well, right? So this is the model, and these are the forces that I'm seeing from the outside-in perspective. Now, next, of course, is the case for HR reinvention. Traditional HR looks at internal focus, tactical cost, functional HR, and to some extent, reactive approach. But the new HR is always about outside in, looking at stakeholder value. And I'm not talking about just internal stakeholders. We need to be cognizant of the external stakeholders, the customers. Are we rethinking how jobs can be redesigned, how technology can be used to enhance customer journey? And these are the client-facing, these are the revenue-generating clients that we need to manage, right? How are jobs redesigned? What is the value system? How are leaders leading to empower our people to make decisions, right? So that the customer journey is much more seamless on that front. How do we bring across strategic value? How do we demonstrate talent investments to drive revenue and long-term organization sustainability, right? In terms of human capability, how do we transform HR into a strategic enabler by leveraging on AI, right? That is based on analytics and based on data. And gone are the days of gut feeling based on purely on gut feeling and experiences as well. Because business leaders of today and tomorrow wants to look at data, evidence. What is the evidence-based decisions or recommendations that HR professionals are talking and using? Finally, given the various geopolitical issues and the changing landscape, right, the new HR requires us to have that level of agility, anticipating opportunities to be able to connect the dots, right, from an outside-in perspective, to be able to make sense of the data, and how does the data translate to a HR strategy that is aligned to the business strategy. So the agility mandate is something very critical that a lot of HR leaders must have as part of your skill repertoire. Now, let's look at why this new HR is important from the CEO's lens. From the CEO's lens, what are they demanding? CEOs of tomorrow no longer want HR to just manage processes and compliance. They expect HR leaders to demonstrate strategic foresight, authenticity, and measurable impact. Now, let me put to you, if you are working in a pharmaceutical company, what will be the major critical job that you must have in your organization? That job role, major critical, will be, all right, none other than your chief pharmaceutical scientist beyond the CEO, right? Because that will be the person that will actually design new drugs, test new drugs, innovate, and then test it as a revenue source for you. So on the people angle, right, and business strategy and technology, these are the three quadrants that I'm looking at in terms of then developing ourselves into a strategic advisor, which is really very key. So further, when we look at CEOs, what they demand from HR, number one is to be able to spot future leaders before your competitors do. As I said, the demographics of tomorrow will be much more smaller. The world in Asia Pacific is facing, right, a silver generation, right, a super aging workforce. We need to create talent magnets, not just job posting. We need to turn exit data into market advantages, right? We need to be able to predict skill gaps before the performance shows up, right? There is a gap and there's a need. We need to build teams that outperform market standards, asking us to do things like, for example, salary benchmarking are old school ways of thinking, right? We need to outperform benchmarks over and over again. We need to make hard calls on poor performance quickly, because if not, that when the downward slippery slope happens, whereby people, for their fellow employees, will not be able to actually, will not be happy about, especially when poor performers are left in the organization. Finally, we need to connect talent moments or talent movements directly to revenue growth, meaning that we need to build our headcount in terms of skill development as and when the revenue grows, right, as a precursor to business success. Now, as I said earlier on, right, the future of HR is about talent, leadership, organization, and HR practices, and looks at human capability to derive at some form of market value for yourselves. And I think that's really very critical. And this is what Dave's call it the outside-in approach. HR cannot just be a cost center. HR cannot just be a police officer or police departments looking at compliance. We need to look through how revenue is generated through our people interventions. Again, this is adopted from Dave's model about the case for HR reinvention, whereby the external forces demanding organizational agility from a human capability standpoint. We need to have we need to anchor our interventions in ethics and values, right, and build long-term workforce resilience, right? We need to look at talent, skill at speed and scale. Gone are the days whereby learning and intervention takes 1 or 2 days. We need to scale it quickly. We need to have leadership in terms of judgment in an AI augmented world. And finally, design our organizations for adaptation and agility as well. Underlying all this is all about ethics, values, and as well as human wisdom. In terms of evolving roles to meet business needs, we need to move from administrative support to strategic value creation. And I think that's really very critical, because the future of HR is characterized by specialization, strategic specialization, broad enterprise impact, right, and being integrated into the organization, whereby HR should be embedded into many of the enterprise level. So the systems thinking must come out, right, not just only on the functional areas as well. Now, in talent from year 20 to now to year 2030 is definitely moving from just job-based to skill-based, all right, whereby in the skill-based economy, we are looking at skills over roles, fluid talent allocation, deployability, right, and career bouldering. Gone are the days about career laddering, meaning upwards, and right now career bouldering is also towards sideways as well, moving from front office to middle office to back office and vice versa, to give the talent a good repertoire of skills in terms of how an organization or how your organization would have to function. In terms of leadership, right, moving from just a cascading down effect from decisions to how decisions, from a leadership standpoint, how decisions are flowed from one person to using AI as an insight. What are the customer signals? What are the risk indicators? And what is the market data for us to actually make concrete decisions? But underlying all this as well is all about human ingenuity and human judgment. Organizations, as I said earlier on, is about agile capability building, right? The leader as a decision integrator, right? No more a top-down leader or authoritative leader. In terms of organization, we need to be agile to be able to have different teams, right? That is form, disperse, as and when the organization need it. And that is done through a skill-based organization and the mobility of the people as well. In terms of HR capabilities, I think these 6 key areas sums it best in terms of talent intelligence, culture, risk and compliance, leadership development, strong AI governance, aligned with the business strategy. And I think this is something that we really need to pivot towards, rather than just being a support compliance function. And that's what we look at as a HR strategic lever that we need to have. Now, as I said, AI can accelerate decisions, but only human wisdom can determine what is right. Now, as I come close to my presentation, sorry for taking it a bit too long, but I thought it was important for me to walk you through the decision points that I'm seeing. Now, I know that Madhuri said that 2030 seems to be a long way away, but I'm going to counter this. I'm going to show you we are just 1,404 days away as of today, 26th of February, right? So the question for you to think about after this conference is that what will you do today to get to where you want to be by 1st January 2030? Given that we are 1,404 days away. So on that note, thank you very much. All right, do connect with me. That's my QR code. Happy to share views, thoughts, bounce ideas. If you need to connect with me on LinkedIn, do connect with us also on SHRI. All right. So on that note, thank you very much for hearing me for the last 30 minutes or so. All right, and happy to take further questions. Thank you. Madhuri, over to you.
Thank you so much, Alvin. Indeed, 2030 suddenly seemed very, very close, and thinking what is that one shift that each of us need to make, maybe today, maybe this quarter, or what is it that new learning that we need to have within us, to look at future of HR as not reactive, but a real partner to the business. So thank you so much. A lot of nuggets that we have picked up. Checking in with everybody. Any questions? And you can open mic and speak, or you could put the question in the chat box, and we'll be happy to read it out for Alvin to answer. Request everyone to please come on the turn on the camera, light up the room. It looks pretty dark right now. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Deepak. Thanks, Aditi. Thank you, Chaitanya. Any questions, thoughts, any reflections? I have to say, Alvin, some of the things that you spoke of today, whether it was the future of work or whether it was becoming a change champion for the business, it was like a sudden jolt or sudden wake up for me at least. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, most welcome.
Yeah. All right. Checking in. Any questions, thoughts, any reflections coming in for anyone? Oscar, 2030 is only 4 years from now, very near. Yes, absolutely. I still,
1,404 days away.
yes, there you go.
After today, it will be 1,403 days away.
Yes, yes, a lot to do, indeed. Hmm. How is everybody feeling hearing the 1,403 days? Maybe we can start there. One word feeling after you hear all this. Swati?
Hi, Vipri. Good afternoon. Thank you, Alvin. It's really an eye-opener. So many things are running at the back of my mind. How many shifts we have to do every year? I feel it is a step change is what is going on in my mind. It cannot be an overnight change. It has to be quite change in terms of the talent. And I have a question for you. If you can just suggest foreign HR, what is
Swati, your voice is breaking in between, Swati. If you could
sorry.
hold the mic closer. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Is this fine? Or I'll just put it in the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll put
Works.
my question across in the chat. Thank you.
There is one more question in the chat, Alvin, about the IHRP certification. I am not very sure about that part at the moment, if that's something. What do you see the impact of legislation shaping HR profession?
Yeah.
You're on mute. Yeah.
So thanks for that question, Ifa. I think for those of our overseas participants, there is this institution here that is funded by the government called the Institute of Human Resource Professionals, IHRP for short, and we have actually embarked on the certification. I think the politically right answer is that I do not see it as being compulsory by year 2030. It will be a moral influence or moral suasion approach to get more HR professionals to get their certifications. But to me, it's just not about the certifications. It's the quality of the certifications that I'm very mindful of. Many of us would have gone out and chased certifications, certs, professional certs and everything. But the question is that the ability to apply what you learn through getting the certifications is more important than the process of getting the qualification. All right, it's what you do with the new knowledge, how you reinvent yourself, how you apply it, right? The new knowledge that you acquired in the workplace as well. All right, it's just not about being book smart. It's about being business smart, right? And then you have to ask yourself, does this certification enable me to either rewire my thinking or give me many more aha moments than just a piece of paper? Don't chase, the summary here is don't just chase papers. All right, good.
Very true.
Right.
It is not about the paper, but the application of what you're learning, and what else can you do? Are you able to look at what I gathered from you, Alvin? Is that is the HR able to look at the business as a business in terms of what does finance play a role? What does technology play a role? What would anything else impact the business, like you said, political or the step model? That was so powerful indeed. Thank you. There is one more question there. How would HR look like by 2030 with AI augmented HR and not HR replaced by AI?
Now, there's one thing, all right, that AI to this very day still requires is human inputs, right? AI can tell you or give you ideas, but at the end of the day, humans itself, people, right, can tell you the root, we ourselves are the only, currently, we ourselves are the only element that can do sense making. All right. AI at this point in time cannot do any ground up sense making of what is the problem. It is true. Second point is AI requires human ingenuity, right, to give the right prompt to then when the data comes out as well, and that's where we look at it and we from an unbiased lens, right, that's where we can make the right judgments and recommendations. Because whether we liked it or not, if you look at AI today, your chat GPTs, your Perplexity, your Claude, and so forth itself, there is still a very strong element of biasness. And I said earlier on, the future of HR professionals must be grounded in ethics and values. Because we are in a people business. We develop leaders. We develop our talent. We put across values, right? We develop competency models. And therefore, directly, we are building citizenship, good citizenship in our respective countries and ecosystems. HR is just not a function. To me, HR is that we play a role in how our societies are to be evolved. Because we are in the people business. Amongst us, in every one of our organization, we spend thousands and not millions of dollars developing competency models, developing value statements, mission, vision, right? Behavioral indicators. Tell me, have you come across an organization, right, that value system is contrary to human ethics and values? None, zero, isn't it? So when we develop our people, when we develop our leaders, we need to think about how do we develop leaders beyond the 9 to 5, whereby when they go out into the personal and public space, they are also behaving as how our companies would like them to behave. Good citizens, not only good employees, but good citizens as well. So that's the barrier that I want all of us to have and think about when we develop talent and leaders.
Indeed.
Right. I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. My question is on AI, Now the question here is that most of the countries around us, including ourselves, are in it in some way or another. But I think we have to be clear that whatever that we do with AI to help the business, we will also need to think about how our people who are affected feel about it, and what can we do in order to help them to get up to their feet again, over over the time that may have to be worked out. I think it's
Yep.
important because we have no scheme to assist someone who loses a job.
Yeah.
And what can we do to help them to get up to speed, And I mean, these are things which we have not gone into yet very much. But I think as we move towards the time, the 2030, we have to look at it quite quickly. Not only Singapore, but most of the countries. Because if you are going to lose good people, and we need to ensure that you have enough people who is currently available in order to get the job done.
Yeah.
I think that's my view. Yeah.
Yeah. Rightly so. Thank you for that view.
Yeah.
May I just add one more layer to this? I'm just wondering whether all leaders need to deliberately slow down the adoption of AI to be able to really reap benefits out of it.
Yeah. Great.
Yes.
Then, yeah. There are two more questions in the chat box. I think one more, which is, what are the key critical HR skill sets besides SCTP that we should work on in preparation for 2030?
Okay, by the way, for our overseas participants, SCTP is a program that SHRI is running. So one of the critical HR skill sets is to be able to connect all the different HR levers and integrate them into one holistic strategy. From employee onboarding, or rather from a talent acquisition perspective, being able to map the talent landscape and pipeline to understanding your organization by year 2030, right? Visualizing what and how your organization is going to be like in year 2030, and work backwards from a HR strategy to be able to connect all the dots into one singular viewpoint. To be able to make sense of the data, to be able to tell a story behind the data that makes both business and HR sense. And the third point is also, based on all this information, how would my culture should evolve, right? Given the external dimensions of what I mentioned earlier on. Gone are the days whereby it's just a top-down, right? Whereby leaders sets the culture. My view of the future when it comes to culture setting is that it's going to be integrated and viewpoints from various work groups, not only from your full-time executives, but also how your stakeholders are going to demand, right? How do we view culture? How does our clients, our customers view our organization culture? It's just not only from an employee standpoint. Because, right, if you have a very authoritative culture and your customers, right, your future customers are going to be more empathetic, if there's a disconnect between perception of your organization culture from your customer's viewpoint, chances is that your customers will walk away from you. Think about it from that lens. Because culture building has always traditionally been an inside out, right? The behaviors and so forth. But going forward, culture must also be perceived from an outside in perspective, meaning your external stakeholders will look at how your organization are put together, how leaders are groomed together as well. So coming back to the question itself, how do we then, right? The skill sets that I always say is that we need to then be able to connect all the dots into a singular strategy, right? How do we leverage all the different HR specializations, compliance, legislation, employment, employee engagements, talent acquisition, talent development, HR tech, right, and so forth, integrate it into one. And that's the challenge that a lot of HR leaders and professionals face and will face possibly.
So looks like the shift is in the mindset, structures, and then coming up with adoption of how you are getting perceived by others. So the outside in then comes in as well. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. One more, Swati mentioned, which she has put in the chat box. What are the top 4 skills that an HR to adapt to the face the future of workforce?
When we talk about skills, I also like to talk about the intangible skill sets, right? Like Mudiri was alluding to. One is, of course, you need to have that growth mindset, right? I think that's really very critical, right? Because the business world is not static. The business world is a very dynamic one, and it moves and is being reshaped by how leaders around the world, how political leaders and business leaders shape it, right? And they shape it in a very fast manner. So growth mindset is always important. Second is always, to me, is integrity, right? HR professionals must lead with integrity, anchored and deepened your values if necessary, right? The third key area, I think, to be very frank and honest, right, is to be able, from a skill set perspective, is to be able to not be cobbler's children, right? To also invest in ourselves. I think it's important because HR always has this perception that we always take care of our people. But you also need to have the mindset that we should also be taking care of ourselves. And I applaud all of you for taking time off to attend this webinar to really learn and discuss topics that are very critical, right? And I think the fourth key area in terms of skill sets as well, as I said earlier on, is to be able to synthesize, to be able to connect the dots. And that's a skill set that is not taught in schools and universities today. So these will be the 4 skill sets that I think will be very critical for HR leaders of tomorrow to be able to harness and to exploit as well.
Very true. And that harness is a constant process, isn't it? I mean, it is something that you keep building on. And like you mentioned, it's dynamic. So today, what you are harnessing, maybe tomorrow you need to change and get into something else. Very true.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have space for one more question before we wrap up, Alvin? There is one more.
Sure.
Okay. What have future-ready companies in SHRI or the network or award winners done that inspire you?
I think, what really inspires me is it's not about what we have achieved. It's what companies are doing, leaders are doing, both business and HR leaders are doing to find that repurpose, to repurpose themselves, to reinvent themselves and to reimagine how their organizations, their products and services cater to the larger needs of the organization and as well as societal national needs as well. And that what inspires me greatly, because as what Singapore's founding father, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, once said, the true measure of success of a business leader is not just by the wealth it generates, but by its contribution back to society. So if you think about that quote, that's really what inspires me. Seeing business leaders, seeing HR leaders, right, going beyond the dollars and cents and doing good, not just because they have to do it, but it's because it's their inside their DNA.
That's really powerful, Alvin. Thank you for reminding. It is not just a personal impact, not just the organizational impact, but it's a societal impact that we all are creating through our abilities of reaching out and networking with people and everyday touching those lives. All right. There is a lot more coming up, but thank you so much. Thanks so much for your time, your presence, and your everybody for your engagement. What I found most compelling is that future is not something that is suddenly going to arrive, which is what I was thinking in the beginning, but it's already there. We are already in the spaceship probably. And it is something which we are already designing as HR leaders, as HR change makers. And quietly, I think step by step, there are some changes that we can influence through talent, through leadership, or through organizational designs or adoption of AI, like you mentioned. So, with this close, we would like to close, and I want to just invite everybody to share your reflections or one takeaway from today's session in the chat box. And thank you once again, Alvin. It has been amazing to learn from you for sharing your insights, challenging us as well in terms of how will we lead the future, and inspiring us to do a lot more, bringing in clarity, or even just how can we adapt something new? How can we be those change makers? Thank you so much, Alvin. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me, and also thank you everyone for the wonderful
Thank you.
questions and responses as well. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for a good
Thank you.
session.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Alvin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anjay. Thank you. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we catch up someday. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks,
Bye.
Oti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you. Thanks, Suman.
Bye.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, bye-bye. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vishal. Thank you, Ziwe. Yes, Oti.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.